All right, you guys had a project to do. Remember what it was?
To pick an unusual prop.
Get a prop from a play and describe how you would build it, what you would, materials you would need, and all that good stuff. Who's got theirs?
I was thinking the brooch from Oedipus Rex, or Oedipus Rex, however you pronounce it. The one that he used with his mother.
Okay.
I'm not really sure
So
exactly
what? So what would you do?
Well, first I need to kind of look at examples of the
Okay,
brooches.
hold on just a second. Who does not know Oedipus Rex? Oedipus is the ancient Greek play about the guy, his parents are king and queen, and they get a prophecy that their son's going to grow up, murder the king, and marry the mother, right? So they decide they got to get rid of the baby, but they couldn't kill it, so they had somebody take it off to kill, but that guy didn't kill him. He ended up being raised by another king and queen from another country. He grows up, finds out that the prophecy is going to happen, so in order to keep it from happening, he leaves the country. And lo and behold, he meets his real father. They fight. He kills his father, goes in, takes over that country, marries what's his mother, but he doesn't know it's his mother, and so on and so forth. And then when he finds out what happened, he takes the brooch. Well, she kills herself with it, and then he takes the brooch and stabs his eyes with it and exiles it, right? You guys know that story now? So that's what he's talking about, is the brooch that he uses to stab his eyes.
He couldn't come to terms with what he had seen, and that was like.
He wanted that to be the last image he saw was of his mother.
Yeah.
All right, so go, how would you make it?
Well, first I'd have to look at previous examples because I don't recall the screenwriter mentioning anything about the brooch, just implying that it's gold. So I don't really know what the brooch itself looks like, but I would probably take I don't know, some kind of like stone or old necklace or something that I might have found or something, and kind of like shade it down a little bit, put some accents on it that you get from like a dollar store craft section, and maybe make like a low budget version of that, and then just stick like a pin on the back. I mean, I'm not a very creative person when it comes to that, so that was the first thing that came to mind.
Okay, hold your thought there. Does that sound doable? Does it sound like there may be an issue with it?
Putting on cheap accents,
No,
shaving it down.
because we're all about cheap in the theater, right? Save money wherever we can, make it look good. The cool thing about it is you use cheap accents and stuff like that, like costume jewelry that's cheap that you can buy at Dollar Tree. It can look good on stage because the audience is far enough away. Depends on how it's lit and what you do with it and all that stuff. So that's not an issue. The cheap accents would probably make it look better, which is good. They would not have had a pen on the back like normal today kind of thing. We're talking ancient Greece, we're talking a couple thousand years ago, right?
I'm listening to your promisers.
So that means that it would not be a modern day looking brooch. It would have been something like they had back then. So the pen on the back would not have been a pen. The things he uses the brooch to stab his eyes out with. Why? Because the pointed things that are there, that's what was holding it on there. Not just a little pin, like a little safety pin. So those were big enough that he could gouge his eye out with it. So it's more like something like a comb that you would put in your hair kind of thing, probably. Does that make sense to everybody? So the type of material you would want to make it out of would have to be something that, if it's the actual brooch that she holds, that she uses to hold her robe up or whatever it is that she's using it for, it's got to be able to do that, right? But it also has to be able to come off and look like it could be used to stab him. But if we see the stabbing, then it's got to be safe enough that it's not going to hurt him when he does it. Does that make sense to everybody? So what would you use? If you wanted a brooch that has a blade of some sort coming out, but you want it to maybe be collapsible.
I need to see what it looks like.
chances are you're not gonna be able to find very many examples of what it would actually have looked like. You were gonna find a lot of examples of what theaters and movies have done to make it look like it. If I was gonna do it, I'd use maybe, and again, depends on size, what size it would be. But what about one of those plastic knives that folds up in, that you get at Halloween? That's the kind of thing you want, something that looks like it's coming out, maybe it's painted gold, but when he goes like this, it's not gonna hurt him. Does that make sense? And then you just need some fake blood in there to ooze out. Ooh, that would be cool. Get some blood going all over the place. Blood and guts everywhere.
Oh, a good idea, honestly, is if you're using the brooch and stuff, right? So it's gonna have like a small pin on the back in theory, right?
Not on those ancient Greek ones. That's what we were just talking about.
Yeah, but you said it was kind of like a blade almost, right? Did I hear that?
Yeah, it wouldn't be a small pin. Oh, you're talking about to put on the back of the blade?
Yeah, no, I apologize. I was fixing on others.
Yeah.
Important, but I must have missed that first half, so that's my bad.
No, the blade would be the part that would be what we use as a pen today.
Okay.
And it may not even be really a blade. It may have just been that whatever cloth she has wraps around it somehow and ties off on it.
Okay.
And it's just there for more for looks than anything.
Then I really do need.
It's hard to say.
We're actually gonna make these, right?
Maybe.
Okay. Yeah, I'm gonna do a little bit more research tonight. Thank you.
Yeah.
Okay.
All right, Ben.
So I went with the show Seussical, and I chose the Pillsbury bush from it.
Okay.
And so I figure you could find a, like, depending on the size of the stage, either like an 8-inch or 12-inch plastic pot, and then cut out a circular cardboard to lay into the top of it, probably like an inch deep, and then get a styrofoam half sphere, glue that to the top of that, and then I found some like pastel cotton colors.
Okay, hold your thought. He's talking about Seussical the musical. And it's the what?
The Pillsbury bush.
The Pillsbury bush? How many of these are there on stage?
Just the one.
Just the one. You went with the easy one. I mean, not that it's easy,
Yeah.
but because in Seussical there is the other thing that they have to have almost hundreds of. I can't remember which
Clovers.
the which one? The clovers.
Yeah.
That's the ones that's the hard one, because now you're not only making one, but you're making 100 or more. So the Pillsbury bush, you would use what?
Get like a plastic garden pot, they're like 10 or 12 inches, something like that.
So just a regular garden pot,
Yeah,
plastic one because it's lightweight.
yeah. Yeah, and then cut out a circle of cardboard to fit inside that, glue that to the inside about an inch deep in it.
Why the cardboard?
Just figure it's a light enough material and it's easy to get. You'll probably have some cardboard lying around somewhere that you can just.
To do what with it? What's it doing?
It's going to hold up the styrofoam ball that will then like glue some cotton to act as like
Okay.
leaves and whatnot. And then
So it's filler for the
yeah,
space.
yeah, and you can put like extra like cardboard or something beneath that if you want to make sure it's a bit more stable. Yeah, and I found some cotton that you can use. The one that I had that I was thinking of, I found a pack of like pastel pinks and blues and yellows.
So what's the bush part, the stem or whatever, going to be made out of?
So I was going to just use the half styrofoam ball on top of the cardboard as a base, and then just pile the cotton on top of that and glue that down to not necessarily make it like go up high, but. Just
So it's not coming up, it's just basically on top of the, gotcha.
And then for the pills themselves, I figure if you want to keep it cheap, you can just like cut out some patterns on cardboard and then color them in or something to use as the pills, and then just tape that to the cotton so it can be taken off by the actors who's playing Gertrude.
And what do they do with them? Do they
Gertrude's-
throw them out or do they eat them?
Yeah, Gertrude just kind of eats the pills and then the rest of the tail grow longer.
Okay, so he's got an issue because the prop is a bush that has pills on it that somebody takes off and then they eat those pills. So it's got to be something that's more or less edible, at least that part of it, or appear to be edible. Okay? So there's a couple things you could do, and what you're describing sounds pretty good. If you're going to use a pot, like a regular plant pot, that's great. In the in the arts and crafts areas of like Walmart, or I don't know if Target still has those or not, and all your Hobby Lobby and all those places, where the plants are, the fake plants, they have the styrofoam that fills those pots up. You could use that instead of cardboard, because then it's a solid mass in there instead of you making the cardboard fit into it. So that's a possibility, and they're fairly cheap. I mean, then maybe it's definitely gonna be more expensive than cardboard, but it's cheap. And it's gonna hold up. And because here's the other thing you gotta think about. Whatever your prop is, it's gotta hold up over a period of time. It can't just be one and done. So then you're talking about a styrofoam ball on top.
Yeah, just like a hot styrofoam ball.
Yeah, so that's easy because you can get those at any of those craft stores. And then you're painting it and doing all that stuff. And then the pills, or what are they gonna be made out of?
I was thinking going to keep cheap, use like cardboard and just have the actress like either like slip it back into the bush as she's grabbing another one, or like maybe you
So she's gonna have to palm it. So there's two options. You can either, she can take it off, show it because you wanna show it. And then when she goes to eat it, she palms it instead of putting it in her mouth. And then goes to reach another one. She's just sitting it back into the plant and grabbing another one. So that's one way to do it. The other way was actually to have something that she could eat. So, I mean, now keep in mind, she's probably singing during this, so it can't be something that's actually gonna cause her mouth to be taken up by food. Like, you can't use peanut butter on stage, because that's gonna cause a problem, no matter how good it may taste. So that's an option too, yeah. Cool. Who else? Anybody else got a prop?
Well, I had one, but.
All right, do it, let's do it.
It was kind of like mine. I did like a little classic. I got a flower spot, just like him, for the play Little Shop of Horrors.
Okay,
That's my favorite.
For the plant?
Don't nobody say. But,
For
I
the-
was kinda
for the
like
actual
what he was
plant?
doing. Huh?
is it for the actual plant?
I was gonna do the plant, like you said, I was gonna get the styrofoam and all that stuff. I was gonna make it cute, like a girl. And
Okay, now keep in mind with the plant from Little Shop, who's not seen Little Shop of Horrors? We're gonna have to culturize some of you guys.
Yeah.
Little Shop of Horrors is about a guy that works in a flower shop, and he's got a girlfriend that works there, and he ends up finding this plant that's an alien plant that basically is alive. So it's like a Venus flytrap, but it's actually will talk and wants him to feed it meat. And so then he has to feed it people, because then it eats people and people and more people. And it's kind of a crazy thing, but it's a fun show to do. So she's talking about the plant. What size is this one gonna be? The little one? The little one?
Yeah, for now.
So with the little one, the thing is, with the little one, it still has to be able to move as if it's alive. So you're probably gonna have to have a pot that somebody can reach their arm up in and have a sock puppet in.
Yeah.
That's typically how that one's done. The first one is done with a little sock puppet, and they just feed it little things that just goes in there and just, oh,
Okay.
okay? Then as it gets bigger, now you got a big plant with probably 2 people in there, so that when somebody gets fed to them, they'll help pull them through on into the plant. It's fun.
That's cool. Yeah, I love it.
It really is a fun. Anybody ever worked on that show? I directed it at Harnett Regional and Dunn, and it's a fun show to do, only because, well, it's just fun. It's a musical, but and the songs are all kind of cool. But that plant's fun to work with. So yeah, that's what I would do, is do the sock puppet. And then, but the sock part of it has to look solid. It's just they've got to be able to go in, and then they can use it like a puppet
Okay.
and move it around and give it animation. Otherwise, your actors got to hold themselves there until it's time for the next size plant. And anybody ever done hand puppets? It's not fun, is it? I mean, it's fun, but it's doing this for a long period of time. And then all you can do is move your thumb up and down, because that's the proper way to do puppets.
I think my favorite hand puppet is this one, because you can always see what it is no matter what. Shadow, darkness, otherwise.
But you see what I'm saying? When you have your hand puppet like this, if your arm is up like this all the time, try doing this. Try walking around like this for a while. It wears you out unless you're used to it. So if I was going to have an actor that was going to have to do that during rehearsals, I'm going to tell the actor, do this. Why? Because they got to build up that strength. Now you can cheat and put a thing for them to put their arm down on at some point, but there's still the act of holding that arm up, even if there's a brace under it. It's still something. Who else? Anybody else have a prop? Think of a show and give them a prop, and we'll figure out how we would do it. Go ahead. What you got?
Well, I'm not too sure about this one, but I thought of Freaky Friday, the musical, and I was thinking of the hourglass movie.
Okay.
And I think they're supposed to break it, not too sure. But I was thinking of wood, maybe glass, sand.
Okay, so Freaky Friday is where the mother-daughter switch places. It's based on the movie. They did a musical of it. So there's the hourglass. How big do you foresee this hourglass being?
I'll say it's a pretty decent size. Like, yeah, bigger than that.
So about like this, maybe?
Yeah, either that size.
Probably the bigger the better. Only for one thing, the audience has to be able to see it. Plus, it would be easier if it's bigger to make. So how do you see using wood? But you have to have the glass or whatever for the glass part, the hourglass, right? Because we got to be able to see the sand or whatever moving.
Yeah.
So the trick is, what are you going to use for the, basically it's this shape. You could use something like bowls or wine cup. You know what I'm saying? So like a glass of wine would have that shape. You don't want to use actual glass though, but you're going to use some kind of plastic probably. But then you're also going to have some kind of connection between the two. And there's usually a little bit of space that kind of, so something there, maybe a straw or something attached. But then the problem is your sand has to go through, but you don't want it to fall through fast, because it's supposed to be the amount of time that it takes, right, or whatever. So your opening can't be it has to be pretty small or filtered so that that sand's going down slowly. Otherwise, you're going to have bigger grains of sand than regular sand. Or something other than sand in there to make it look like it's doing it, right? But then if they have to break it, then it's got to either break and then you've got to have a replacement ready for the next performance, or it's got to be able to break and come back together. So that's going to be the trick. So how would you do it so it breaks?
I didn't really figure that out yet.
Anybody got any ideas how to break it?
Maybe if the actors like pull it apart because they was kind of fighting.
Okay, so that's a good solution. So then it's got to be hard enough, held together good enough that it's not going to fall apart as they're doing whatever they're doing with it until, so I would make it where it's a twist of some sort so that when they're fighting, they can twist it apart. Does that make sense? That would be the easiest way. That way they know it's not just going to fall apart as whatever. Let's say they have to dance around and sing with it. I don't know. But if that's what they have to do, they know it's not going to, or if it just fell down, it's not necessarily going to break. Because you don't want it to break, a prop to break until it's supposed to break. And if you've ever worked in live theater, you know that if a prop is supposed to break, something's going to happen to it before it's supposed to break, oftentimes. So that would be what I would recommend, some kind of twist. And maybe if they do it right,
What if we wanted to do something simple?
if they do it right, then the sand can fly around.
What if we just wanted to pick something simple, like the basket from Wizard of Oz, or Wicked?
We'd still talk about how to do it. Because see, the whole point of this assignment is, one, getting you thinking about props and what they're doing. The biggest thing you're looking at, though, is what is the prop? That's one thing. How does it look? How would you construct it? But all of those things are based on how is it used. Because if this is just a prop like a basket that sits on a stage and is only picked up once, big deal. I can go find baskets just about anywhere. That's not a big deal. But if it's a basket that something has to happen, maybe it has a fake bottom to it, that's a whole nother situation. Does that make sense? Who's ever seen Mary Poppins?
That copy little.
The original Mary Poppins, or there is a Broadway show of Mary Poppins. Okay? I went and saw it in New York not long after it came out, I think. My wife and I went and saw it. The special effects in that thing are incredible. For the time it was done, it's incredible. For instance, Mary Poppins mostly takes place in the bank's house, correct? And then in the park and the bank and a couple other places. At the very beginning of the show, you see a drop. This is the Broadway version. You see a painted drop that looks like the outside of their house. And then here comes Mary, and I think Bert comes and sees her at the very beginning and says, oh, that's the bank's house there, or whatever, blah, blah, blah. And then they go away. Then the drop flies out, and now we see what was the drop is actually a real house there, the outside of a real house. And she goes and knocks on the door, they let her in. As soon as she goes through the door, the front of the house on the bottom floor flies up out of sight. So now we see a two-story house. The upper story, you still see the outside of the house. The bottom floor, you now see into the front rooms of the house. So you see the living room, and I think the kitchen was over on this side. Okay, and then there were stairs going up on the back side of the stage. She comes in, introduces herself, does all that stuff. They sing, they do all that good stuff, right? Because it's a musical. And then they hire her. She becomes a nanny. So she takes the kids, and they go upstairs to the kids' room, because that's where she's going to be staying. So as she goes up the stairs, and the kids go up the stairs, and they disappear, boom. The top floor here, the bottom floor here, this moves back. Top floor comes down. As it comes down, the front of it flies up out of sight. So now we only see the top floor of the house inside. So now we see their bedroom, and we see the chimney. We still see the ceiling, the roof outside of the house on top. So you see the chimney and all that stuff. So now they're inside the house, right? Inside the bedroom. She takes her suitcase. She's got her valise or suitcase. She sets it down, and she pulls out a 6-foot-tall coat rack. Out of this little bag that's like this big, she takes out a 6-foot-tall coat rack. And then hangs her umbrella and her hat on it. Right? So it's a solid object. Then she takes the valise and sets it down on the table or the end of the bed, one of the foot tables at the end of the bed, sets it there and starts pulling out other things. All of these things she keeps pulling out of this little valise. All these big, she takes out a sheet, a regular bed sheet, right? She hands one end to the little girl. She takes the other end, they spread out, and they go like this. And then when it comes down, they sit down on this bed that was not there before. How would you do that prop? Can anybody guess? Go ahead, Ben. I knew you were going to be the first to ask.
Yes, you either would have no bottom to the actual bag, or if you did, you would just have it like Velcro, so you could do that, and then have trapdoors beneath wherever you're putting it to bring things up through it.
So you're saying trap doors?
Or just something beneath the stage that would allow you to get things up through the bag that would otherwise like just
Yes. So if you look at that stage, it is full of trapdoors. But the timing has to be. So the moment that they bring this sheet down, those things are already in place. But they're hidden by the sheet. So we never see them come up. But then, as soon as they let go of the sheet and you see the form of the bed, the girl can lay around and like, how is this really solid? So it adds to the illusion of, wow. So how do you get a 6-foot tall coat rack out of a little suitcase? Anybody know?
Suitcase has a little, I guess, lever probably, and you know, it's in the floor, she's just pulling from the floor. But the suitcase has to have a little trap door, I guess. So,
That's a possibility that it's coming through another trap door. That is possible. How about when it's on top of the table and you can see underneath the table and she's still pulling things out?
illusion, I don't know.
It is an illusion. That's the whole point. But for an audience, it just adds to the magic of Mary Poppins. There is another way to do the coat rack. It's a collapsible coat rack. So that when you pull it up, you twist it, it stays in its shape. It keeps its height. So that is a possibility. I'm more willing to bet that it was a trapdoor on that one, though. So when you have a suitcase on a table like this that you can see under the table, and the boy's over there doing this under the table, so you can see that there's no way that this could be coming. So when you have that, what they have is under the bed that the table's next to, there's basically a hollow area that goes up so that when she sets the suitcase down, they can still go up into the suitcase with things. That's how, more or less, that illusion somewhat gets made. But you see what you have to do? You have to think, how is this being used so that I know how to create what it is? And keeping in mind, this has to be used over, for Mary Poppins, that has to be done over and over again, at least once or twice a day. Hopefully for years. Right? Because your hope is, if you're on Broadway, your hope is that you stay on Broadway for quite a while. Anybody else had a prop? What you got?
I have
The cow from Into the Woods? How big is that cow? Like life size? Or close to it? So it's going to have a cart underneath it, basically, with wheels and a handle on the back. What are you going to make the cow out of? Wood? What kind of wood? I'm asking because it does make a difference. I wouldn't use wood for the cow. I mean, I might use it for the structure underneath the cow, the inside, because wood's going to get extremely heavy after a bunch of it's on there. Even on wheels, it's still heavy and moving around. Although you want some weight on there because you don't want it tipping over easily. But if you use a structure like 2x4 structure to give the basic outline of the skeleton of the cow, and then you do a wire mesh and do paper mache, now you've got a better, it's going to be easier to form the way you want it to look, but you're going to have a structure that's solid underneath, but lightweight. And then it's easy to paint it and do whatever you want with it. And if you don't want to use paper, you use muslin, the fabric, because it makes it stronger than paper would be. Does that make sense to everybody? But you use it just like you would paper mache, So strips of paper, you use strips of muslin dipped in watered down glue and glue it together. It's really cool. Anybody ever done paper mache?
Like,
You've never done paper mache until you've done it on a big scale. Because that's fun. Very similar thing to that, what you're talking about, also Suzical. It's the bathtub. Because there's a scene or two that the bathtub's used. So how would you create that bathtub? It's got to look like an old style bathtub, but it's Suzical, so it's Sus, so it's not going to be just the normal shape. It's going to have the shower coming down, the shower head, and all that stuff.
Is this like one of those, like 19?
Somebody actually gets in it. Yes, like in 1940s,
Like an old school tub that's like sitting in the middle of the room, like you said.
Yeah.
So you
Could have the feet on it and all that stuff.
You could probably take, honestly, an old tub and cut off the sides of it so it's just a bowl. And then you could take like those old like Victorian legs off of like a cliche couch you can get out of a convenience
The only problem with what you're saying, and I agree you could do this, those things are cast iron and they're extremely heavy.
That's the gloriousness of paint and rattle can.
But when you're on a musical that has to come on and off stage quickly,
Hey, that'd be lightweight and durable. You use a
how would it be lightweight if it's made out of?
You would use like a plastic tub that you would get for like a trailer or something. You cut off the edges because underneath that tub it's just hollow. Like that, it really is just hollow. You just cut off those edges, you smooth out them, and then you would use the excess to make some legs, and you'd put them into the underside of it, and then you put the legs from the couch underneath, and then you spray paint it to where it looks like it's cast iron or silver or whatever may have you, so that way it looks legit. Like I see it in my head, but maybe I'm not explaining it right.
I see what you're explaining, sounds fine, except for what tub are you talking about? Because
So,
this has to be like a
have you ever-
full-size bathtub.
Have you ever torn down a trailer before, or like done
Yeah.
a little bit of carpentry or something like that?
Oh, you're talking about those kind of, like
Yeah,
the
like
plastic tubs?
Yeah, like those low quality tubs where like it's literally like the tub and then around it where like the edges and stuff that you put like the soap. and you
I see
pour
what
it
you're
into.
saying, so you're talking about, it's a
Yeah.
plastic tub, it's not.
So you would
Okay,
literally cut
because
off-
originally you were talking about the old style tubs, those are
Yeah,
cast
no, I
iron,
just
those
to
are,
make it look like
yeah.
a style tub.
all right, so yes, you could, but now you gotta find one of those tubs too that looks,
Oh, that's easy.
well, maybe, but I'm not gonna go take and tear it out if I have to tear it out. If it's already out, then I'm good with it.
No, I mean like you can legitimately find them in like junkyards, and you can find them in like
Yeah, but you may not wanna use something out of a junkyard. Somebody's gotta sit down in this thing for,
that's the beauty of cleaning it and painting it. And that's the whole
I get
point.
you, but
I'm gonna debate you to the end on this one. I can
Okay.
see it happening.
I can see it happening too. I would rather do it as what we talked about with the cow. Build it up in a paper mache mesh kind of thing, using the muslin instead of the paper. And then there's this thing called ceramic coat that you paint it with that makes it a hard plastic shell, which will make it hold up. And now you've got the shape you want, the look you want, the color you want, but now it's hard so that when they use it over and over again, it doesn't get tore up. Does that make sense?
Well, yeah, it does. But
You could do the same thing with what you're talking about and then paint it with that ceramic shells, that
The-
ceramic coat.
The other
as
interesting
well.
thing about using the legs that you would get off of like an old school like couch that you get at like a what do you call them? Like not a thrift store, yeah, I guess it would be a thrift store.
Thrift store.
You'd have enough base underneath where the leg is to hollow out a small portion to put like a wheel
Yeah.
on it to make it easier to move as well.
You could do that. I mean, the legs aren't necessarily important, it just adds to the look.
Yeah, I mean overall.
Which again, that's what we're looking for.
Overall, I mean, if you cut off the excess and put on what you need to put on, it won't weigh more than 25 pounds tops.
Yeah, and again, this isn't as much about the weight because you're gonna put on a cart so it rolls in and out anyway. Because it's there and it's gotta go off quick.
Right.
So either somebody people have to carry it on and off, or it just rolls in and rolls out, which is easier to do usually. But you also have to have the shower head. How are you gonna do that?
Use like PVC pipe to bring it up and then.
Better than PVC pipe, conduit. Because conduit's metal, they can be bent, so you don't have to have that straight shot. You can make it Susical, that crazy look. And then you could actually put a real shower head type thing on it, or you could build something out of wood or paper mache or whatever you want. You could, if you wanted to actually have water come out, make it have water come out. Anybody know how to do that?
Pressurized 5-gallon jug that you probably get for like at an RV. Or you could have somebody with a funnel stand overhead depending on how it's set
But if
up.
you want it to look like it's actually coming out of the shower head itself,
I got you. So you know those, nah, that's not gonna work, never mind. I was gonna, so you know how they had like these gigantic syringes that you would use for like animals at a zoo for disgusting things?
yeah.
Yeah, you could just literally fill that with water with a tube and run it through the shower head from a distance and kind of hide it out of view of the curtain so that way when you.
But again, if it's gotta come in and out, that's gotta come in and out with it. You could have hidden on the backside of the tub a battery and a pump, and there's a tank somewhere that pumps the water out when it's turned on. So it's all self-contained. It's just a pump like a pond pump. So it's just cycling it through. That would be a little bit overkill because to my knowledge you don't have to, we didn't do it when we had it, we didn't use the actual water. You could just have, what's that stuff called? What's that glittery cloth and stuff called? What's that stuff? Come on, you guys know this stuff.
I know you're talking about, glittery cloth.
Yeah. Huh?
Lingerie?
Not sequins, it's an actual cloth. Come on, you know what I'm talking, they make curtains and dresses and stuff out of this stuff.
Not like tulle.
Yeah, like,
No,
that's the only thing I can think of that's remotely.
you know, you would know it when I say it. Come on, it's right there, it's right in front of me.
Tinsel?
No, you could use tinsel. Let's just say you're using tinsel. That's the cheap stuff, but we'll use it. You could hang that from it and make it look like there's water coming out. Because as the lights hit the glittery stuff, it makes it look like water's actually moving. LeMay, is that it? Fleece or LeMay? Come on, you guys, nobody's a fabric person in here?
Yeah, I literally went to sewing camp as a kid and I have no idea what you're talking about.
When it comes to fabric, I just wear it, I don't study it.
I tell you what.
That part. So you want the prop that we pick to be functional, like,
Well, if the show calls for it to be functional, yes.
oh, okay. I was gonna say like, cause if I just wanted to make like York's skull, like that, it doesn't really do anything.
No, that's just a skull that has,
Ouch.
and either you can build that from scrap, plastic or whatever,
Yeah.
or you can get one of those skulls from a science lab or something.
I didn't know if I needed to like pick something that
No, I'm wanting something more useful,
like, right.
but yeah, that could happen. I mean, like her cow's not a real cow, but it's supposed to look like a real cow, and it gets moved around as if it's the cow for Jack and the Beanstalk story side. His brooch just gets used once, technically, although although starts out as a costume piece and then becomes a prop.
Now that's another question I have. So like some of the pieces of furniture and stuff in Beauty and the Beast,
Uh-huh.
and how they're like walking around. Like,
Because the furniture becomes
right.
animated objects, yes.
Yeah, would that be considered a prop or a costume?
Yes,
What do you think? It's both.
technically they're costumes, but they're functional costumes for what they are.
Right.
Does that make sense?
Yeah.
It's a costume because they're wearing it the entire time,
Okay, that makes sense.
as opposed to a prop, which is usually set down and picked up and set down and picked up, typically. Who else has a prop? Shrek? Uh-huh. The donkey? He's real though. That'd be a costume. Unless there's a scene like where Shrek throws the donkey or something. There's not, but that would be cool, wouldn't it? Then you have to have something that looks like donkey getting thrown by Shrek. Because you wouldn't want him to throw the actual person because that'd be too heavy. That would be cool though. And I bet you Shrek has thought about throwing them a few times. Especially in the first one. Let's see, I'll come up with a prop. You tell me how you think you would make it. Oklahoma, the musical Oklahoma. Have you seen it? I don't know. Oklahoma is set in the early 1900s, late 1800s, early 1900s, right before Oklahoma becomes a state. And it's about cowboys. It's the farmers and the cattlemen, and they don't get along. In the very first scene of the play, of the musical, Aunt Eller is on the farm and she's churning butter. How would you make a butter churn?
I'd start with the broom handle,
Start with a broom handle, that's a good start.
and you could probably use an old pail, or you could, maybe not a pail, because the idea of old butter churners, they're like, they look almost like a long barrel, but they're not really a long barrel.
All right, so who does not know what a butter churn looks like? Everybody knows what a butter churn looks like? A couple people don't. So butter churns, like he's saying,
You
it
could,
looks like a small barrel
you could take a pipe,
with a pole coming up out of it. And as you move this pole up and down, the pole at the end of it, or the broomstick as he would say, has a round plate on it that goes up and down. And you would put the milk and the lard inside. And then as you're doing this, or as it's spinning around, depending on which way you're doing it, what you're doing, is it would mix those two together and you get butter out of it. Does that make sense? And it could either be a thing that spins around, or it could be a thing that squishes it together.
right, so to make that, right, we said broom handle, right?
Uh-huh.
We could take one of those big, like, white construction pipes to put in at the center, and we could take refurbished wood and put it around it, and kind of like lean them out just a little bit, so that way it adds to the shape of what a butter churn.
So you want them kind of like this kind of shape?
Yeah, just about.
Okay.
And then you could attach that wood to that pipe to where it conceals, so no one knows that that pipe is there. And then at the base of the broom handle where, you know, it was supposed to be the part that like hammers it in and stuff, you could probably take some of that refurbished wood with like a disc, cut out a disc, and then drill a hole, and then maybe nail it or glue it onto the stick. I mean, no one's gonna see a nail from a
Right.
distance over here, so.
No, they're not. Well, that's what would have had to happen to it anyway.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
But, you know, that's, I can see it happening. And then you could just paint it with whatever wood stain you might need, or you could burn it to make it look natural, you know?
Okay? Is that basically what you were thinking? Did you know that that's not the only way that a butter churn looks? They actually have butter churns that are more like maybe it's a barrel that's laying sideways that has a funnel up, that you pour the stuff down this way and then you turn it with a wheel, and inside it's mixing it all together inside, which is another style. Either one would work. It's construction-wise would be very similar, only you don't need the broom handle, you just need. But the old style broom handle is the one that we mostly know about.
Can I be excused for a minute? I apologize.
In fact, if I could use my phone, which is over here recording, I think I have a picture of one. Who in here is interested in props or set pieces, or doing scenery at some day, maybe? here's a hint for you. If you ever want to get into doing something like that, or if you're just going to be working in a theater for technical side of things and helping out with that side, a great thing to do is anytime, and of course you can't do it right now, but if you can ever go to a history museum, if they let you take pictures of everything you see, because you're going to find all kinds of examples of things. And usually what my wife finds me doing is taking pictures from all different angles. So I'll have like 20 pictures of one item and come back and it's like, why did I take? Oh yeah, it's because that looks like a cool prop. And if I ever had to build one, I have all the look for every angle and everything. Because that would be cool. I hate these things. Just saying. All right, it's 10:30. Let's take a quick break. I'm gonna pause this.